All right, so a lot of our conversations, not only for the podcast or for other business ventures, but also a lot of personal things that have kind of developed in this interesting, unique friendship, has been kind of talking about a lot of grief type things and trying to air a lot of that out. It's almost like we're giving this voice to something that I don't think either one of us still really fully understand or
Uh-uh.
totally want to tackle, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are again. Yeah, we both have had a lot of grief in and around permeated through our lives. And so giving voice to the grief and what it is and what it says and what it means, and finding the magic even within that has been kind of around a lot of our conversations, hasn't it?
It has, and I wanted to start there because actually I was just listening to this audiobook a little bit ago where there's a story about the Native American take on essentially the invention of the flute and how it was given kind of like a voice to expel and express the grief. So, thinking about it along that angle with like the not just the musical, turning on the radio and shouting at the top of your lungs, but actually picking up an instrument, and whether you can play it or not. Because in the story, obviously Cloud had no idea what he was doing. He had heard the wind come across a branch and the way that it sounded, and he picked it up and he tried to do the same thing. It took him a little bit to get things right and actually do it, but as he got more and more involved with it, it started to actually help him release those feelings and those emotions.
Yeah, the more we, and I feel like it's the more we express, I feel like he expressed his grief in that story, instead of like a lot of people shoving it down and pretending it doesn't exist and not taking it into account for anything. He expressed his grief. He let the music sing his grief. Now, we don't necessarily need to pick up an instrument. We could. I picked up my share of instruments. I don't know that you know this about me. I'm musical. And I sing and have done that for years, just for fun anymore. I haven't sung professionally or anything, but yes, we could sing, but we could also, just by expressing that emotion and allowing it to just be in the body, it gives it a voice and it gives it a place to go instead of shoving it down and pretending that it doesn't exist. We get uncomfortable with the feeling of when people express their grief, we want them to stop. We want them to stop crying. We want them to stop. Society does. I don't. Last time I was at a funeral for a student, mom was sobbing, and I just sat down next to her and put my arm around her and loved on her. So, and that's just let it be, let it express, let it experience whatever experience it's going to bring to you. Let it do that. I get really excited when I talk about this. Can you tell?
Just a little bit. But now, see, the reason that this popped up in my head and whatnot earlier, a few minutes before we got started, was because the beginning of the story and the whole point of it is the fact that we've all, like we said or talked about in our last conversation, the obvious aspect of grief, which is when we lose someone to death. But this story starts with him losing a relationship.
Yeah.
And he ends up going off and runs as far away from the pain as he possibly can of seeing her. So finally his legs give out, he lays down and he falls asleep. And in that state of mind, it's like he had nothing but a knife with him to defend himself. So had a bear or an enemy showed up to kill him, it wouldn't have mattered to him anyway. And then he comes across the stick and gradually develops the flute to express it. and he walks himself along the trail and, you know, through the woods, playing the flute, expressing these feelings. And ironically, he ends up back on the other side of the river from the village that he was running away from. And then, you know, as he's playing, it draws an audience, and you know, there's nothing but the older women, the middle-aged women, and the girls there listening. And the interesting part is that it actually brings him back to that love of his life, and they had to kind of drift apart to see that, experience the grief of losing each other once to really find the value. And I think, you know, that really ties into a lot of what a lot of us face with like these satellite type relationships, where we have somebody, we grow close to them, then for whatever reason we drift apart. And we kind of struggle a lot in there. We still see them, we still come across them, but there's still that feeling of grief that neither of us end up dealing with.
Yeah, and I also think that story is really beautiful because it's almost like they had to go through the grief of losing each other to really fully appreciate the other person. And that's one of those just beautiful things that grief can bring into our lives if we allow it, is that you can appreciate things a little more fully. You can live a little fuller because you've had that experience of grief. Now, if you stay in the wallowing, that's not going to happen. But if you just allow the wallowing to be, allow the emotion to pass through you, kind of like Cloud did. Once he started playing, he allowed the emotion to express. When we express, it runs free. We allow it to release from our body. And then through that, on the other side of that, then we can more fully experience the beauty and the joy that is our lives in this human experience that we're going through.
I think it really puts a lot of perspective on the role that somebody plays within your story, though.
True,
you know,
it does.
You get those couple of paragraphs where someone comes into your life to teach you something, or, you know, to affect your life however they do, whether it's positive, negative, healthy, or unhealthy, whatever the case may be. And then you split apart and you see that lingering effect. And then it kind of puts you in a position where you've got to grow through that grief experience. And whatever whatever is on the other side of the river, when you get there, when you finally cross that stream, it feels a lot more satisfying.
Yeah. Well, and people come and go in our lives, and we don't always fully appreciate the role that they play until maybe they have gone. Is that kind of what you're...
I think that's pretty much it right there. Is a lot of that concept it's a lot of that concept. When something's in our hand, we don't really put value on it until it's gone.
Yeah. Well, and then if it happens, like in that story, if it happens to come back to us, then we are more able to fully appreciate what is there because it was gone.
Exactly that, because, you know, as he's standing across the river and they're all watching him play, when they finally physically connect and he ends up back in the village, you know, he's asked by her why you're playing such a sad song, you know, being in the context of, there used to be a man, in this case, Cloud, that had captivated his heart, or her heart, and now she's standing there feeling sad because of the emotions that are coming out through the flute. Mm-hmm. And then she asks him if, to play a happier melody, and he can't do it because it's not within him, at the moment. And then when she expresses those sentiments, obviously the mood changes. And I feel like, a lot of that ties together with the things that we go through in the course of the shifting and drifting patterns of our story with who we connect with, who we don't connect with, and how you start to build a better value around the people that come later on in your story.
Yeah, and you start to get picky about who you let into your inner circle. I know I have found that to be very true, that the people that I'm the closest to are the ones who have been hand chosen, I guess you could say, by me. They carry a certain energy about them. They have certain viewpoints on life that are a little more, not that they don't challenge me, because I love having people in my life that challenge me a little bit, or push me to be a better version of me. Like those are some of my inner tribe of people are like that, but also a lot of our philosophies kind of line up and we kind of encourage and push each other in ways. And I don't know, I feel like the older I get and the more I've experienced love and loss and relationships and in all of its forms, the pickier I am about who I'm spending my time with and where I'm putting my energy and all of that.
But I think that just comes from being more seasoned in life.
Yeah.
When you're young and you're naive and you're just chasing a space filler, essentially, you don't give yourself the space to really consider the effects of the energy. You don't. That's like the last thing on your mind. Then, as you go through these different trials and tribulations, and for lack of a better way to put it, you start to build the wrinkles and lines across your face, right?
Speak for yourself, my dear.
Okay. Yeah, I will. Mine's usually hidden by a beard, though, so it's okay.
Yeah, but
And
remember, I'm older.
okay, this is true. And as that happens, though, you start to realize that these people that you engage with, there is in fact a give and take of the energy back and forth.
Yeah.
If you're putting something into something, you should have a return on that investment, and you should be getting the same fulfillment back.
Well, and I know too, for me, when I was younger, and I'm going to speak a little to romantic relationships and not necessarily friendships here for a second, but I felt like there were societal expectations on me especially as a woman. And I don't know, I mean, you can speak for the male experience better than I can, of course. And I know for me, it was this expectation of like, you get married, you have kids. And yes, I wanted kids, but that was just because I wanted kids, not because I was expected. And like, these are the things that you do, and you get this job and you do the things, and this is how life is. And the older I've gotten, and I've gone through a couple of divorces, and yes, I wanted kids when I was younger, and that was actually something I had to grieve, was that I didn't have biological children, and it's not something I talk about very often. I do that with you. What's up with that?
I don't know. It just seems to happen. I do a lot of the same. It's
like,
weird.
Yeah, it's so weird. And so, that was another area of grief in my life, was that, grieving not having biological children. But also I had these expectations. Like when I was single from my first divorce to my second, I was single for 9 years. I had somebody, who are you dating? Are you getting married again? And it was always about what relation, and it made me so mad. It made me so mad. Because I can be single. It's okay. Like, seriously, you can be a whole person without being in a marriage relationship. I have a whole, full, beautiful life as a single woman. And now when someone comes into that, they need to enhance that life and not take away from it.
I think that takes a lot of courage that a lot of us are afraid to face, though.
It does. Well, and again, it's that seasoning as well. Like the older I've gotten, the more I don't care what society says, what people say, and the more I'm able to not care about that. And Granted, I don't have my mother hovering over my shoulder anymore, saying anything. But even her, I would, when I was younger, I would just look at her and go, Mom, I'm a whole person without all of that. And she'd be like, yeah, I know you are, honey. I just want you to be happy. Like, it doesn't, I don't need a man to be happy. I just need a beautiful life.
But I think that's something that gets drummed into us growing up, you know, is you're supposed to do all these different stereotypical things.
Yeah.
And those are the expectations. And when you fall outside of it, sure, to your face, it's kind of like one of those, well, okay, it's great. You're doing good. You look great, whatever. But then behind your back, it's, man, why are you not just doing? Why aren't you not living up to
Right.
these expectations that we instilled in you?
This crazy societal standard that we don't even need to have.
Right. And, you know, it's funny because it's kind of the place that I'm in life now, you know. Been divorced for multiple years now over the second time, and I have no hurry. I don't really care. You
Yeah.
know, it's like this newfound comfort space to just explore life and, you know, define it by my standards and not kind of what I believed it was supposed to be.
Yeah, and to learn how to be an individual and how to love yourself. Like, how can I love somebody else if I don't fully love and appreciate myself? And having the time to be able to explore that and explore, like, should I choose to pursue a relationship in the future? Like, I get to dictate what that looks like. I get to have those conversations with that person of this is what this is. And these are the parameters around it. And this is how much we talk. And this is like, we get to decide that together. It's not, this is society's expectation of that. It's, hey, let's create something together here, which gives you a freedom and a whole different perspective.
That's one thing that I've definitely discovered. And I'll tell you, when you get that picture kind of painted, even just stenciled and outlined, it's really hard to fit that mold. And, you know, I don't know if that comes from the seasoned aspect or maybe some other, I guess, darker kind of area. But, you know, when you get to that point where it's like, it's just got to be simple. Life is just, you know, simply about the basics and celebrating the virtues and the things that make up your value system. It gets really, really difficult. It's like walking through like the biggest patch of thicket that there is in the world to find somebody that actually fits that mold. It's weird.
But there's no mold. Like, I'm sorry, I've shattered the mold and we've thrown the mold out. For me, it's someone to personally, this is me again. So for me, it's someone who like fits in and appreciates life in a certain way. And I do agree with you on the simplicity. Well, we've had this conversation. You can see my lovely house in the background. We went pending yesterday, so my house is selling, and I'm drastically downsizing into 300 square feet. This is 1,600, and so and I know this is a conversation that you and I've had several times. Is just that cutting back to the simplicity of life, cutting back to the basics, and you know, for me, I'm shedding all of the stuff that was my parents that I don't feel like I have to carry with me anymore. And that's a part of, for me, that's a part of this like simplicity process.
I think that's really what it outlines, as I've discovered, is more of a celebration of self. Yeah. Because you find those, like, you know, you find those core values, you find those core elements, and that's really what is important. Mm-hmm. When you add all those other things to it, you're kind of just clouding up the picture and
muddy in the waters.
Yeah, you get too distracted. Mm-hmm. So when you build up that simple, this is the core of things, it opens up a whole new world.
Yeah, it really does. And it takes away like all of the trappings of what society says we should be to be successful, and gives us like we get to create our own definition of what that is. So whether it's in a relationship, in, successful in our grief, successful in business, successful in life, raising kids, successful in raising kids, like however that looks, we get to define that, not what the outside world says it is.
Which, I know from experience in different walks of life, there's kind of like the textbook thing that everybody reads. And, whether it works or not, that's what we're driving through the wall and we're going to make it happen. But, that's like the black and white picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you close the book and you realize there's a lot of elements that you got to think on your feet, you got to learn to shift and adapt. That's where it becomes a bigger circle. And that's a scary picture for a lot of people.
It really is a scary picture for a lot of people. But I have found, like, if you're that person out there that's listening to this conversation and you're thinking you guys are nuts, yes, we are. It's okay. And the more you begin to step out of that mold of the expectation and what you're supposed to do to what you truly love and what sings to you, the easier it becomes.
It does take a lot of practice.
It does. It does. But over time, it also becomes a little bit easier.
It's kind of the concept, really, if you're listening to it, thinking about it, of putting together camp. You show up, you check in at the campground, you go over, find your spot, pull the tent out of the back of the car, set that up, you throw up some camp chairs and light a fire, and you're pretty well set for the night, right? It's the same thing. It's just a simple step at a time, and get out of your own head and don't overthink things.
Yeah, very much so. Well, and don't compare yourself to other people, because their journey is different than yours. I'm in a business mastermind, and one of the women is getting ready to like sell her house and upsize. She's married with kids and needs more space, and she does voice recording and needs to not be recording in a closet. And we have these conversations where I'm going the opposite direction. And to me, that's my definition of wealthy and abundance is I'm shrinking and downsizing and getting smaller and cutting ties with things, not cutting ties, but cutting things off that no longer serve me so that I can be freer to travel more and go more places and do more things, which is wealth and freedom to me, whereas hers is the opposite. So it's kind of cool to see that contrast. And I'm not going to let her define what it is for me, and she's not letting me define what it is for her. We're just marveling in the difference and celebrating each other. And that's okay.
Which is, no, I was going to say that exactly that. That's okay because, with the idea that this is a personalized journey.
Yeah. And we don't have to do what everybody else is doing.
Right. Because why write all the exact same stories to put into the book of life?
Right. It's so boring.
Right.
Don't be boring.
When you put the original, unique spin on it and you make your chapter stand out, is what it's all about.
Well, and you are you. You can only make the music that you can make. Nobody else can do that for you. And it takes all of us making our own music to make a diverse community and a diverse world. And so by singing your song, like Cloud did, even though it was sad, you add to everything, because he didn't do what everybody else was doing. He struck out on his own. He created some music himself. He sang what his heart felt. And when we do that, we're true to ourselves and beautiful things begin to happen. and life gets magical and amazing, and we can break away from those should molds and be that, but this is what it is.
It's exactly that, because it starts out tragic. He finds out that the love of his life is been promised to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
He has his kind of upheaval, like really dark moment. And I feel like in those kind of moments is when the next light kind of gets shined on you, whether you're expecting it or not. When you're in the midst of struggle and you run face first into it till you fall down, you're bound to run into that next curve or that next twist in the path that either leads you somewhere that you were expecting and going to be comfortable in with a better form of appreciation, or it takes you this route that you never would have imagined that you would have been into. And ultimately for you, that ends up being beautiful and amazing. It really showcases the characteristics and the value system that you have, and you're able to honor and celebrate that.
Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid. Like, if you had told me a year ago that A, I would be sitting here having this conversation with you, B, that I would be teaching yoga and grief yoga specifically, because I was teaching yoga at the time. I was specializing in kids, which I still do, but that I was going to be teaching grief yoga and that it was going to be the joy of my heart, I would have told you that you were absolutely insane, because it was not even on my radar. But it has come into my life and created such a thing. Like, if that hadn't happened, you and I never would have met. We wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now.
But that's where the flexibility comes in,
right?
Because when you embrace your journey, magical things happen.
They do. And people get put into your path, and just amazing friendships come out of it. And all of these things happen. And there are occasions where I literally am just along for the ride. And I'm wondering what's going to be around the next bend.
That's the power, though. You know what I mean? That's the power of actually just relinquishing and accepting the situation. You accept the fact that nature already has this stuff planned out for you, and it's your job to connect the dots and live it to its fullest.
Yeah, and enjoy. I had someone tell me this the other day when I was putting my house up for sale and going through, like, having people going through the showings and getting offers and all of that. A friend of mine was like, Paige, enjoy the journey. I was like, oh, but I want it to be done, but enjoy the journey. And when I stopped trying to control it, because I wanted to, not that, I got an offer within a week, so that's not shabby, or I got a accepted offer within a week. That's pretty good. But I wanted it, like, as soon as the house was listed, I wanted that offer and I wanted it to be accepted. But I wouldn't have got to show my house to these lovely people who are the ones going to be buying it. And, there's some other things that have happened kind of along the road that have helped me stretch and grow as a person, that if I hadn't stopped to enjoy the journey, I would have missed all of that.
It's never about the destination.
Mm-mm.
It's always about, if you think about it, it's all about when you take a road trip, it's all about all the different places you get off all the different exits and places you stop.
Right.
That actually become the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the same thing. You can apply that to no matter what phase of life it is or what struggles you're going through. It's not about the destination, or at least the preconceived one. It's about each little step along the way, each little exit mile that you jump off at.
Yeah, and if you think about it, if you go back to our story about Cloud, he wouldn't say that he was probably enjoying the journey, but he was enjoying the journey. Like he was in the moment and um not controlling, not worrying about it. He was just expressing feelings and emotions, and wherever that road took him is where he went. And so he was in the journey as well. So many parallels to life in that story.
There really is. That's one thing that I've really grown to appreciate about Native American storytelling is all the life lessons, morals, and parallels, and just inspirational ideas that they throw in there.
Yeah, and I know your crowd isn't really a yoga crowd, and I'm a yoga teacher, which is kind of fun. But although you tried it once, which was interesting. But that happens on the mat as well. Like all of the things that we do in practice on the mat, especially mentally, we can take and apply to life off of the mat. So, like, the mat is a microcosm of the large, the whole, the macrocosm.
It's an expansion of storytelling, essentially,
It is very much so.
and it's
Ooh,
all
maybe that's why I like it. Maybe that's why I
it's a
like it so
deeply
much.
personal. It's a personal story that you're telling yourself.
It is. And it's a way to stretch and expand that story, to find those edges, to find the sticky points, to find the triggers, and to work, process and work through and soften them.
It's an experience for sure when you use any form of expression to work through those triggers.
Yes. Yeah. And yoga is not the only way to do that. There are a multitude of ways to do that. It's just the way I do it.
And tapping into that physical movement though is actually a good avenue to travel or explore when you're trying to work through one of those emotional triggers, because you've got kind of a physical distraction going on.
Mm-hmm.
The trigger, it's present in your mind, but you've got the movement to be able to help you work through and kind of find some way to sit comfortably with it.
Yeah. And the movement can also help release things too. So, stuff that I think we've talked about it. Did we talk about the body keeps score before the book? There's a book.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score, and it talks about how when we stuff our feelings, and it doesn't matter what feelings we stuff, when we stuff and we don't experience any emotion, that it can get stored in the tissues within the body, and using physical movement can help release that. And so I have seen, I'm going to speak again to yoga just because that's what I know, but I have seen yoga classes where you get put into a specific pose and immediately you're crying for absolutely, you feel like no reason, but it's because whatever was stored in that has released out and is moving through the body.
I've experienced it firsthand. Well, as we kind of start to come toward the end of this conversation, the question that I hit everybody with, you remember,
I
right?
know the question that you hit everybody with. Yes, I do remember.
So, from, I don't know, at any stage in the journey, some words, wisdom, and inspiration.
Stop caring what other people think and be true to yourself. And the more you learn to do that, the more you will be living your purpose.
I like that because it is all about purpose and it's within each and every one of us. We've just got to find it. We got to allow ourselves to be open to it when it taps into us.
And then continue on that path and don't let anything distract you from it. Like once you find it, hold true.
Realize that it's a marathon.
Yeah. Stay on the trail because it's a long one.
Exactly. Well, you got to let people know, because I know you've been super busy as of late. You got to let everybody know where they can get in touch with you and keep up to date with you.
All right. I can be found in a variety of places. I'm on Instagram at Tulsi, Tulsi Rose Yoga. I post so many things. I'm sure you've seen my Instagram feed's gotten filled up a lot lately. Even gone live a couple of times, new experiences. I had a couple clients come on and do some testimonials live with me this week. I am also on Facebook of the same name, Tulsi Rose Yoga, and then my website is www.tulsi, Tulsi, again, roseyoga.com. If you want information about the grief, just do a / and type in grief-yoga. Those links are also available through all my social media.
Well, it's been fun to record yet another conversation. I'm sure we'll do it again.
I'm sure we will. Hey, we have some fun stuff coming in the future, so stay tuned.
Yes, we do.
We're going to do an in-person collaboration of some sort. So.
Yes, we will, and we'll definitely have to get together to share that here too.
Yes, we will. Once we get the details hammered out.